kind of thinking is that Toronto is one of the biggest cities in North America. It only has one major airport in Pearson, which is very far from the downtown core, very difficult to get into the downtown core, and Billy Bishop kind of solves all of those problems.
Back on Closer Look with Michael Friscolanti. I'm Scott Sexsmith. The Premier making a lot of headlines recently with these big, wonderful projects that he wants to. Lots of projects. It's almost like he wants that to be his legacy.
It sure feels that way.
It does
feels
feel
like
that way.
every day, right? Whether it's, I'm not the expert following with the Science Center, the Metro Toronto Convention Center, the Ontario Place renovations.
The island that isn't an island.
Yeah, the Phil us in.
And now there's talk about landing jets at Billy Bishop.
Yeah, that's the big talk this week. And I guess him and his late brother, Rob Ford, talked about this a lot, about expanding the island airport. And now that Doug is the premier, he's brought that back up, was talked about it in a scrum this week about how they're going to make it happen one way or another. They're going to expropriate Toronto's share in that property. It's fascinating because Billy Bishop is one of those amazing things.
It is.
I don't know another city that has an airport like that, major city that has an airport.
It's a great airport.
It's wide. There was a time in my life where I was flying, I felt like every day, and I was living at that airport, and I was coming in and out of there. First when they had the ferry going across, and then I literally watched that whole tunnel be built, and it was an engineering miracle in my mind that you could put a tunnel under a body of water like that. And every time I landed or took off, I'd walk over top of it and look down, and they'd be doing more and more, and they dug really deep. It was amazing. I sound like Donald Trump talking about.
It's the most tremendous.
It's the biggest hole I've ever seen. Anyways, the charm of it, I think, was that these jets weren't huge jets. They were I don't know what the right term, what kind of planes they are.
Q400s?
Q400s, yeah. And then Air Canada flies their Dash 8s out of there or something like that. And it's really cool. You come into the city and you see all the big skyscrapers as you're coming in.
It's beautiful.
It's wild.
Yeah.
And you always did kind of feel like you're really close to the buildings too, right? It's like, wow, you're really tight, and you wonder if you could fit bigger jets. And of course, people who live down there, they've known that they've lived down there for a long time. There's always been an airport. But the idea of bringing in, and we don't know what size jets yet, but bringing in big, 300 passenger jets, that's a big difference, and I bet a lot noisier, I would assume.
A lot noisier, and if I'm the pilot, I'm double-checking my brakes.
Yeah, so you can imagine there's a lot of complications and a lot of details in how this would actually work, how the expropriation would work, the things that would have to be done to the property to accommodate bigger jets, what the flight paths would be. And who better to talk about it than a guy who's already been digging into all these issues, Aidan Shamandi. He's one of our reporters at Toronto Today. He used to work at the Trillium. We've had him on many times. He's always doing really interesting stories. But it's been a while since he's been on.
It has been.
I'm looking forward to talking to him.
For decades, Billy Bishop Airport has been the subject of a tug of war between those who see it as a vital economic engine and those who see it as an intrusion on Toronto's waterfront. Now, Premier Doug Ford is making a bold move by announcing that the province will take over the City of Toronto's stake in Billy Bishop Airport, a step that could clear the way for larger planes, more passengers, and help to relieve pressure on Pearson International Airport. But critics, including Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow, say bringing jets to the waterfront would mean more noise, more congestion, and could violate long-standing agreements governing the airport. To break it all down, including the implications of this move, is Aidan Shamandi, our reporter from Toronto Today, who's been covering this story. Aidan, good to see you. Welcome to Closer Look.
Thanks for having me again, guys.
Okay, Aidan, has Ford brought this up before, or is this the first time that he's talked about expropriating the land?
No, this is a long-standing interest going back decades to, the Ford's kind of heyday on city council, even as far back as 15 plus years.
All right, Aidan, what's the rationale here then? What's driving this push, or flying it, I guess is the right word?
Well, Pearson is not exactly a popular airport. People complain about it all the time. It's jammed, and Billy Bishop is right on the waterfront close to downtown. It is a airport that political officials use all the time whenever we get freedom of information requests back showing political figures travel. They're always flying out of the airport. And the kind of thinking is that Toronto is one of the biggest cities in North America. It only has one major airport in Pearson, which is very far from the downtown core, very difficult to get into the downtown core, and Billy Bishop kind of solves all of those problems.
Can we kind of go through the expropriation a little bit here, Aiden? Because I've heard, obviously, governments expropriate land all the time, but I don't think I've ever heard of an expropriation of a portion, like an ownership stake in the land, because others are own this land as well. Is it going to be simple for the Ford government to do that?
So the city owns about 20% of the land that the island airport is on. And I mean, given kind of Canada's constitution and, cities are creatures of the province does have a lot of powers here. So there is the existing Expropriations Act, but the province can kind of pass a bill allowing them to do whatever they want if they don't think that the existing legislation kind of gives them all of the powers that they want. The kind of added complication here, and this comment might be obsolete in a day because this is a fast moving file. We don't have a lot of details. It's just really going off what the premier says. Is it's one thing to have the city own part of the land. It's another thing for the city to be actually part of the tripartite agreement between the Port Authority and the federal government. So it's kind of an open question right now based on early conversations that I've been having with folks kind of in and around the space as to whether even if the city no longer owns the land, do they still kind of have some legal claim to the state, given that they are a signatory to the tripartite agreement, which the province is not.
That makes sense. That's what's confused me is that your coverage has been great, but that's what I wondered as well. Like, there's more to it than just taking the land to put a highway in, for example, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because they're like, it's the land and it's the legal document governing it.
Aiden, can Billy Bishop actually accommodate these big passenger jets that Ford wants to fly in there?
Yes, with a caveat. So the airport as it exists cannot, but there have been plans going back again, like decades, to expand the airport. In fall 2024, there was an item that came to City Council where the airport was talking about kind of 3 scenarios for expansion. There has to be a small expansion by 2027 to comply with federal safety standards, but that's just really extending the runways a little bit. But as part of that process, the airport came and said, okay, if we want to do this little expansion to comply with federal safety standards, we can do that. It'll cost this much. But we can also do a larger expansion or a much larger expansion, and that much larger expansion would allow for the accommodation of larger jets.
Would that mean more fill, like we've heard with the the convention center? Like, would they actually have to build the island bigger?
As far as I understand it, yeah, it would require like more runway, not necessarily like more kind of. Because the runway, the airport is connected to the Toronto Island, so it doesn't necessarily mean expanding like, the kind of public part of the island and whatnot, but it's more runway.
Yeah. Has anyone looked at even just filling the whole lake? Just, we'll do that.
It seems like we're almost getting to that
Wouldn't
point.
that just be easier, Aiden?
Well, the Toronto Islands actually, interestingly enough, was just a peninsula back in like 1850, but there was a huge storm that knocked out part of the peninsula connecting it. So, I mean, you could do that, but nature has its own ideas.
That's the headline. Aiden Shamandi says you could do that. Still Lake Ontario.
I like it.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Aiden. We appreciate it. No, I'm just kidding. There's all the talk of, obviously of the noise from these planes, and that's what's really has people upset. Obviously, I've flown in there. We've all flown in there lots of times. I lived in Toronto for a long time. I can't imagine the difference between what's flying in there now and like say a big, Boeing 747 or whatever that would fit in there coming in. In terms of that, we know that you can't really fight the expropriation. There's not much you can do on the books in terms of legalities. But in terms of fighting this push to get bigger jets, what are the people who oppose to it doing?
So again, it's early days, but there's an old group called No Jets TO that was very active in kind of the early 2010s when this was last kind of spiking at council. They've revived themselves. One interesting thing that we haven't really heard is the federal Liberal MP's position on this, considering like this, when this is hot during an election time, like this is kind of the only thing that people downtown talk about. And there are by-elections going on right now. There's one in Scarborough Southwest, which is a little bit east, but would be in the flight path.
Yes, that's right.
So I imagine this is something that will be brought up as part of that political process. The other interesting thing, which again we don't really have an answer to, is we don't exactly know what kind of planes the premier is envisioning here, and the specific type of plane would have a different noise profile. The other thing a specific type of plane might have is a different flight path. So on the eastern edge of the island is where a lot of these things would be coming in, but the city just has just put forward plans for a massive development on another kind of stretch of infill island that would be along the flight path. And the open question is, if jets come to the island, would the flight path affect the building heights that are planned for this massive development? It seems like they would right now. There are currently plans to have as high as, I believe, 45-story towers in a place called Villiers Island. And those would need to be chopped down if jets come. And then even further east, you have what's called a transit-oriented community development. It's a big provincial housing plan to put tall towers near their new subway stations on the Ontario line. Still an open question as to whether the potential flight path would affect the building heights plan for there. So, kind of Ford's plan for bringing jets to an island could affect Ford's plans for housing further east in Toronto.
That's fascinating. That's why Aiden covers City Hall for us. You got all the angles covered. That's fascinating too. We are jumping ahead, but I assume that would involve some compensation. If a developer's already got approval to build this development and then it has to get chopped down, someone's got to pay that developer, I would assume.
One would imagine the province can indemnify itself from certain things, but I think it's kind of one thing for the province to piss off the Villiers Island people, because that is not necessarily development that the province has a stake in. That is a city-led development with some federal money. But the East Harbor thing, that is completely provincial-led process. So that would be, kind of angering people that you had previously made a deal with. But the problem is it's so early days. There are no solid plans. We don't know anything around the flight path, the building heights, the length of the runway, what kind of jets will come, the noise profile, the type of noise it is, whether it's kind of like a propeller noise or a more standard kind of jet engine whine, what we would need to do at the foot of Bathurst Street where the entrance to the airport is to accommodate the additional traffic. It is just open question, open season right now.
Aiden, let's get back to the opposition for a second. The Premier has suggested that a, quote, very, very few amount of people are standing in the way. Who is he referring to? Now, we do know that Mayor Olivia Chow has drawn a clear line saying she doesn't support jets at the airport, but who else is on that supposed short list?
So it's civil society groups like the Snow Jets TO and a lot of the people who live at the waterfront in, I believe, 2014. And again, this has come to council so many times. In 2014, there was a study that the city conducted, and the people who lived near the water were the ones who were most opposed. It was actually fairly evenly split when you look at the whole city of Toronto in terms of would you welcome jets on the island, do you not welcome jets on the island. But if folks downtown are really opposed, then their councillors, I assume, would be pretty opposed. But if the city doesn't really have a say, then what the councillors want wouldn't really matter. But the Premier has also suggested that as population has turned over in those key areas since kind of the last time this was really hot in 2014, the kind of younger, more upwardly mobile folks in these new areas like Liberty Village and City Place, where these people primarily live in high rises and are, younger urban professionals, they would be more amenable to jets on the island because it kind of serves them, because they would be traveling for these shorter, longer haul flights, and it'd be right there.
Yeah, that makes sense. What's the current feeling of people who live downtown, especially in the condos that are right by the airport, about the current traffic, just the Porter and the Air Canada flights that go in and out of there?
I personally don't hear too many complaints, because it's just kind of like, if you've moved there in the last like 10, 15 or so years, when a lot of these developments have gone up, this was a known quantity when you were moving in, right? But just getting back to the opposition question, the other thing is, because this is like the island airport and it is connected to the Toronto Islands, there's actually a little slice of beach called Hanlan's Point, which is like a kind of really popular nude beach. It's frequented by folks in the gay community, and this is something that they've been very protective of Hanlan's Beach in the past, and this airport would, depending on how it is expanded, potentially affect them. So that's just kind of like another civil society group that I would expect pushback from, but haven't heard anything from yet.
This is maybe an unfair question, but in terms of legal challenges, could you foresee any down the road?
It depends. I don't necessarily know at the moment who would file a legal challenge, because I mean, like, if the city's opposed to it, it's like, okay, do you want to fight the province on this, or do you just want to like stand down and, maybe get some compensation? People sue over everything, right? Like the amount of suits that have been filed over the Ontario Place thing, despite the province's kind of like clear legislative power to do that, it doesn't stop people. But sorry. One very interesting thing to watch will be is the premier has said that the city will get compensated for the land. So, the city owns 20% of the land. They also get about $5 million per year through property taxes and like a per passenger levy that they charge to the airport. I don't know how much that land is worth. I don't know the last time the city did an appraisal of that land. And I don't know how much that land would be worth, presuming jets are going to come there. I assume it would be much higher. So that's an open question as well. But
in my experience with expropriation stories is that someone will have to do that fair market value assessment in order to see how much the province is going to pay for that land. So that will be part of the public process. That'll be interesting to see what they come up with. There'll be multiple appraisers from my experience that would go in and do it.
Yeah. But I mean, again, it gets back to the political question of how much is it like if the mayor wants to fight this, then you would take a maximalist approach to the expropriation thing saying, oh, it's worth $100 billion. We need $100 billion from the province. But if you don't want to pick a fight with the premier heading into an election year, when you're trying to negotiate more transit funding, more shelter funding, more funding to make the city operate on a day-to-day basis, this might not be the one you want to pick, but who knows? It might be a good political calculus.
That's a great point. It's why you're so good at what you do, Aidan, because there's some leverage here too, right? The city can get some stuff out of the province if the province really wants this little bit of land, right? That's the way it works.
Yeah. We saw that with partially, at least with Ontario Place. In the 2023 Toronto mayoral by-election, Olivia Chow was saying, "I'm going to fight like hell to preserve Ontario Place and prevent the province from bringing the big spa down there." And then she relented and she got this thing. I don't know how many viewers would know. It's called the New Deal. It was like a multi-billion-dollar deal where the province agreed to take the Don Valley Parkway and the Gardiner Expressway off the city books. They would pay for the maintenance, upkeep of that. They gave the city some transit funding and whatnot, and the Gardiner and the DVP were absolute drains on the city budget. So getting the province to take care of those has been a massive financial windfall to the city.
That's a great point. Okay, in the immediate term, what's the next step to the story that you'll be looking for?
Some kind of solid plan from the province. I don't exactly know when we will get that because it does seem to be very early stages, given that, these are kind of not like wholly off the cuff remarks from the premier, but we don't have the Minister of Transportation at these press conferences saying, X, Y, or Z. And then also the federal response, because we've been talking city province this entire time. The federal government is a partner in the tripartite agreement. When there was talk about expansion, about 10 years ago, the Trudeau government firmly came down saying no expansion. That was an important kind of policy promise that they made in the 2015 election that helped deliver them parts of downtown Toronto. So given that there are by-elections going on nearby currently, I would expect that those questions will be asked, and people will ask the Prime Minister or the Transport Minister to pronounce on those. But I believe it was last Monday. Recently, there was a press conference with the Federal Transportation Minister, and he did not want to get into it because it doesn't seem like this is something that is on the federal government's radar. At least to a big degree right now, because it is a kind of a provincially driven process right now. But we need input from the feds.
Yeah, Premier Ford has a way of putting things on other people's radar, doesn't he?
He does. It makes my job fun, honestly.
That's right.
Call that job security.
That's right.
I think. Anything we didn't cover about the airport or anything else you want to bring up before we let you go?
I think we covered the federal angle, the flight path. I am literally just going through my mind here. I think the flight path thing is really that's not really something that's got a ton of conversation right now. I'm working on a number of stories on it right now.
All right.
So I don't want to scoop myself.
No. Stay tuned.
Yeah. Real early days. Too hard to tell.
All right. We would be remiss in bringing this up because we haven't chatted for a long time. Probably next to Derek, you're one of the biggest Leaf fans across Village. You're Brad Treleving for a day. What's one move you're making?
Resigning.
No hesitation. No.
Fire. Actually, no. I don't know if I would fire Berube first and then resign, because as much as I dislike our current coach, I think he's doing a fantastic job of being the tank commander, and we absolutely need to get a top 5 pick because we are in absolute shambles. So I would probably keep him on, resign, and never pipe up again.
Is it more painful to see the Habs doing so well while you guys are doing so poorly?
No. because they are a now very well-run organization that doesn't just like recycle the 200 hockey men at the top of their organization. They brought in a player agent to be their GM. He's done fantastic. So I have friends who are Habs fans. I am happy for them. It's not like I hate the Leafs more than I hate the Habs, and I'm a Leafs fan. That's how this works. Right?
That's great.
Well said, Aidan. We won't quite plan the parade just yet. From Toronto today, there's Aidan Chimanti. Thanks for this, Aidan.
Thank you, guys.
We got to have Aidan on more regularly because not only is he good at he's great at what he does, but he can explain things that a person like me a layperson can understand. You know what I mean?
That's the brilliance. Yeah, he's really good at taking a complicated story. He does tackle so many complicated stories. I think we had him on last year, the year before, talking about this big project he did on hallway healthcare.
Yes.
Where he found out how bad it was in each hospital in Ontario based on FOI requests, put together a database, and reached out to all these hospitals. I mean, it was a fantastic project.
Yep.
And I don't want to say he does it with ease because it takes a lot of effort, but he does understand exactly what his mission is in terms of finding where the news is, right? And it's a hard thing to do because they don't the organizations and governments don't just put that out there and say, okay, everybody, here it is, boom, with big flashing lights. He's digging in and finding it, and so I can only imagine what he's going to come up with about the flight paths, as he mentioned. We'll
and
see.
You can't teach that stuff, even when you have a good teacher like you.
No, he's way better than me.
All right, that's it for us tonight. Closer look at villagemedia.ca. What do you think about big jets flying into Billy Bishop? Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. For Derek Turner, executive producer of tonight's program, Michael Friscolanti is our editor-in-chief here at Village Media. I'm Scott Sexsmith. Have a great night. Thanks for your time. We'll see you tomorrow night at 7 right here on Closer Look.
Frisco and Scott's Wardrobe provided in part by Moores, Sault Ste. Marie.